Welcome to the Skill Code. I'm Matt Adams alongside of Cameron McCormick, the 2015 PGA Teacher of the Year. And once again, we have a wedge in hand. While in the past, Cameron has taught us about proficiency and even consistency with this club, in this show, we're going to talk about expertise, taking it to, Cameron, a PhD level.
PhD wedge play. Rarely, if ever, do we get to dictate that our ball is sitting on a perfect lie in the fairway. The wedge shots that we hit are very rarely what I call vanilla. Flat green, middle flag. So sometimes what we have to do is, in order to take our skills to the next level, we've got to develop some versatility, some diversity in our wedge play. The first place to start in developing some versatility is in being able to create 3 trajectories with one particular club. There are some setup considerations that go into the skill code of PhD wedge play to create the potential for a change in trajectory, and then there are some in-swing considerations that we're going to get to. But let's start even before we take the club back. Okay, so if we understand the concept for dynamic loft, which is what the ball sees as it's being struck, that would then cause the ball to take off at a certain angle relative to the ground, we know that in order to create that low launch trajectory, that 30 degrees of tour level launch, we need the handle leading a bit more than what it would start at address, right? This club has 60 degrees of loft on it. So tour level launch trajectory would be 30. I'm going to teach us a way right now to create sub-tour level launch in a case like I have right in front of me here, where I want to get to that back flag and try and skip it in there super, super low. But what about that second situation where we don't need that really flat trajectory for this into the wind back flag shot? What about when we need to toss it up more of a mid trajectory? Maybe the flag's in the middle. Well, then we wouldn't reach impact with quite so much handle lead, and there are some setup adjustments we're going to cover for that one as well. And then lastly, the super high trajectory shot that almost everyone wants to learn. Okay, so changing dynamic loft. How can we change that even before we start the club back? It's as simple as setup adjustments in stance and ball position. So if this would be a normal mid-trajectory setup for any of these distances of 40, 50, or 60, super low would be ball almost off my right toe here, just off the inside of my right foot, and balance heavily to the left. So that adjustment again, I'm going mid-trajectory, stance for low trajectory, back to mid-trajectory. What's the stance adjustments for high trajectory? Simple as dropping that right foot back. So mid to high, I've dropped the right foot back, I've shallowed out the bottom of the swing, and that's going to enable that club to slide under that ball a little bit better and throw it up in the air. Let me give you a demonstration of all 3. Before I start all 3, I'm going to start from the standard, more mid-trajectory stance position. Here we go.
How far is your target here, Cameron?
My target here is going to be the first flag at 40 yards.
Okay.
Okay, there's middle. Here is super low. I'm expecting that launch trajectory to be somewhere south of 30 degrees of launch. So it's probably about 25 right there.
22.2.
You can see that interaction with the ground, how that club really wants to drive and dig, because that leading edge is turning into a cutting edge, isn't it? Okay, so if that's the low, let me demonstrate the mid now. So we're going to start at middle in terms of the stance position, and we're going to just remain right there. The balance or the pressure of my feet is 50-50 or slightly biased towards that lead leg, so I ensure the club's still traveling down as it's striking through impact. Target, again, is still around that 40 to 45 yard range, mid-trajectory. That's really good, and I suspect that one's going to launch probably 34, 35 degrees in the air.
33.2.
Okay,
well,
there we go. And we see the dramatic difference in the divot pattern here. The low trajectory, where that club's coming in cutting, leading edge being a real knife, pushes the divot down. The divot wants to stand up. But the second one, the club's releasing in a slightly different way that kind of separates the turf away from the ground. Those are the in-swing dynamics that we're going to get to shortly. But before that, we've got to hit the high one. So, mid-trajectory stance, high trajectory stance. What does that do? It shallows out the bottom of the arc and allows the club to slide under the ball a little bit more. And then we give it a swing. And I suspect that launch trajectory is somewhere north of 36, 37 right there.
You're correct, 37.4.
There we go. So we went 24, and then about 33, 34, and then up to 37, all by just changing where that ball is positioned in our stance and the relative width of our stance for that.
all setup stuff that Cameron's talking about now. We're going to take it to the next level. We're not done with the PhD for your wedge play yet. When we come back, he's going to talk about some
show.
Welcome back. I know that you guys are excited about the pathway we're going down right now because, first of all, in the first segment, Cameron, we were talking about setup, and we saw dramatically different trajectories with the same club, 3 different trajectories, in fact. Now you're going to take us into that dynamic loft so that we can find out how you can work the ball even more precisely. We're talking about a PhD level.
Exactly, PhD level. So we're trying to take vanilla and make it Neapolitan. We're trying to give you more tools for the player to attack flags when you've got these finesse wedges in your hand. And so if we start with that underlying principle, we can affect trajectory just based on our stance relative to the ball. We can also affect trajectory based on the in-swing dynamics. And I know the viewers at home that have high-level golf IQ recognize that there was differences in the swings that I was using as I was executing those shots. That's what we're going to pull back the curtain on right now. What are those differences? And the differences really relate to the loft instruction that I'm providing the ball, right? That dynamic loft. So for a low trajectory shot, low trajectory stance, low trajectory finish. Club head is underneath, below the handle level. Mid-trajectory wedge play. I'm going to release through impact the club head underneath the handle at a relatively slow rate. So you'll see the club head come up a little bit higher than the handle. High trajectory shot, I'm going to release the club head super quickly underneath the handle at the bottom of the swing, so this club's going to stand up. I love to create a picture of sand in the shaft falling down out of the little hole that's at the butt end of the grip right here. For all the players at home, it's a great visual to let the club head stand up as soon as it possibly can to send that ball way north, okay? So let's actually hit these shots, and I'm going to freeze the finish so you can really imprint this visual and therefore rehearse this at home in your mind. 40-yard shot, low trajectory stance we've covered, now low trajectory swing. There's a bit of hinge in the backswing, but most of the instruction to the ball comes in the forward swing in the form of that finish shape. Here we go. There we are.
Ooh.
That's a super low one. It's gone a little further than I anticipated, but nonetheless, launch angle probably south, below 30 degrees.
It is below 25.9.
Fantastic, 25.9. Okay, club drug into the ground, didn't push the turf out, just kept on digging down. Okay, so if this was the finish position for low, this is the finish position for mid, I'm going to allow just a little bit more hinge in the backswing to create this fluid motion in my wrists, and then add to that on the follow-through side as well. Need that mid-trajectory stance as well. There we go, 40 yards. That's super good, right there, 40 yards.
Ooh.
At probably 34 degrees of launch trajectory.
That's your guess, 34 degrees, you said?
34.
34.8.
There we go. And you don't need TrackMan at home to know this. You'll just be able to visually see out there what cloud in the sky that ball is launching at, and then correlate that with the feeling of the release through impact. Okay, what was that high trajectory shot that we all need and all long for in our own practice? That's that high rate of club head passing through impact. What are we going to drop out the butt end of the club? Some sand right out that hole. Here we go. 40 yards, mid, high, ball slightly forward of center. Fabulous.
Oh, that's nice.
About 40 yards. I'm going to guess at
holy.
about 39 degrees of launch angle.
Even better than that, my friend, 46.
There we go, bingo. So let's review those elements again. Key principles, the underlying principles of PhD mastery of trajectory. We've got to create differences in release patterns, low, mid, high, all based on the feeling of how you either hold the club head low or release the club head high and dump sand out of the grip end.
When you're doing a show like this, it's easy to be a fan and watch shots like that happening, particularly when they would hit and spin and stop or even come back towards the hole. The last one, that one you hit high, it actually hit close to the hole and spun away about a foot or so. We're talking about spin, and we're talking about it at a PhD level when we come back.
Ball can rip back, or whether it's going to take a couple of hops and stop right by that flag.
Welcome back to Skill Code. He's not just getting bored. That isn't there just because he's having fun, because in this segment, what we're talking about is that which, again, everyone thirsts for, is putting spin on the ball. How many times have you played with your friends and they say, I can't make the ball spin? The first thing you need to know is how to make the ball spin is what causes it, and that's the direction we're going to go. What are you playing with that toy for?
Pinwheel. So we got wind. Wind is the force here that's causing the pinwheel to spin, correct? So where is the wind hitting? It's hitting the perimeter right here. It's hitting these big, we'll call them sails on the outside. And we can use this pinwheel to visualize spin control, at least the generation of spin on a golf shot. So spin is created by friction, which means clean club face to back of ball contact, and it's also the application of the force. The application of the force is the point that I want to cover with this pinwheel, meaning if I hold it up right here to where the wind's not really affecting it, I start to blow right at the middle. It doesn't want to spin there, does it? So when I apply a force through the pinwheel in the middle here, it won't create rotation about the axis that it wants to rotate around. But yet if I start to blow right up at the tip right here, it's going to spin with a lot of velocity. So what's the learning point as we can employ it at home? The learning point is the more we can cut across the cover of the ball, the very edge of the ball with our club face, the greater chance we have to impart spin. Okay? Second point is, this is just not going to work. What's not going to work is those that are out there practicing and hitting any number of 5, 10, 15 shots and leaving their club face super dirty. You don't want your club face super dirty, because when it's super dirty, the grooves are filled up and you compromise your ability to create that friction. Okay. By example, I'm going to hit a shot with dirt on the club face right here, and we're going to see how much that shot actually spins. I'm going to hit about a 40-yard standard trajectory, maybe a little lower trajectory wedge shot since the wind is so strong. Dirt caked in the grooves, just by example. I'm going to guess that one's going to spin around 3,000 RPM on a, maybe 4,000 RPM on about a 45-yard carry.
Yeah, you're pretty much right, 4,800.
Perfect. Okay, now watch how spin rises. Wet towel, clean grooves, and a brand new wedge I've got right here, and I would suspect that those at home probably haven't changed your wedge in maybe a year or 2 years. Tour players change their wedges out. Now, granted, they're playing a lot, but they change them out every 3 to 4 weeks. So if you haven't changed your wedges out in the last month and a half, 2 months, I would suspect you should look at those grooves. All right, same shot, clean grooves, new wedge. I'm going to guess it's spin around 65 to 7,000 RPM. That's very much a high spinning shot. Maybe 7,000 RPM on the same carry. It's ripping back off the green now.
Yeah, that one came back at you. Your spin rate was 9,640.
Look at the cost of having those grooves dirty. Look at the cost of a wedge that isn't fresh. Is that really the cost that you're willing to bear and give up control of your ball? I think at home you're probably shaking your head saying absolutely no at this point. Okay, there's another way we can capture more spin as well. Again, going back to that application of force, we just talked about friction. Well, the application of force across the ball, if you're a tennis player, you'll understand a slice versus a top spin for a right-handed player. Top spin creates an overspin, slice creates an underspin. It's not quite the same in golf, but it does have a correlation to the RPMs that we're creating. By demonstration, watch this. The first one I'm going to give you is about the same trajectory shot I have been hitting, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create more of like the normal backswing that I would be creating in the swing, where the club face stays a little bit down to the ground here, and the swing is traveling around me. About a 45-yard carry again, maybe a 50, and probably had about 7,000 RPM right there.
Your RPMs, your spin rate is still up there, 9,165.
Ooh, good. I'm making really nippy contact right there. That's fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to create a different blow to the ball this time. That blow to the ball isn't so much around me. It's more out and across. I'm going to create more of a likelihood of that club sliding under the ball just by working the club up to the sky a little bit, just by pivoting the club face just ever so slightly, and see if this doesn't amplify spin. So mid-trajectory kind of stance set up here. Rather than the club traveling around me, it's going to travel out and up this way, and it's going to cut across in a low kind of cut across finish. You'll see that club exit to the left side of my body right here. Let's see if we can create spin north of 10,000 on this shot. I think that's spinning 10,500 RPM on about a 50-yard shot.
Ooh, 10,601.
Okay, let's review those critical elements for spin. It's friction, it's clean grooves, it's a new wedge. Let's review the element of the application of force across the ball, touching just only the cover, and understand that the path the club is taking as it's moving underneath the ball is going to amplify spin and put control of your ball back in your hands.
All right, so we just were talking about the how-to. Now we're going to get into this PhD level with the when-to. Like, you know that last flag that's up there on the shelf? What's that, 66, 67?
67
yards?
yeah.
We shot 67 yards that we shot that one. Can you get your ball to spin on a shelf in the back 67 yards away? I know this is what you want to know, and we'll give it to you when we get back. Of wedges here, because you're going to tell us about the spin control and the tools you may need for the same.
Yeah, so stick with me here. The greatest challenge we have is the hole location isn't always in the center, right? We've got to get at hole locations if we're going to capitalize on scoring opportunities. So in this case, if I'm going to try and hit 60-degree lob wedge, 67 yards to that back flag, and stop it on that top shelf and not have it spin back off that shelf into the little hollow swale before, I've got to risk doing exactly what I did, which is airmailing the green and making it almost impossible up and down from downwind short-sided. So I talked in the previous segment about changing spin, and we can do this with our technique, but on this situation, no technique is going to drop the spin down enough. What we have to do is we have to have an ability to hit other clubs that will drop the spin down. Why? Because they're lower lofted. So we're going to talk about deferring down, dropping down, and learning spin control with other clubs. So let's give it a shot with a 56 and see what sort of spin level I achieve with this club. And while I'm getting set up for this shot, can you tell me what that last shot was spinning at as it went sailing over the green there?
Man. Wow. 11,378. That's our highest of the show.
There we go. 67 yards, 70 yards at 11-odd thousand. So 56-degree wedge, same intent, same shot. Here we go. That's pretty good right there. It's got to go a little bit. It's up on the shelf.
Stay.
But, oh, just stayed.
Yeah.
What spin did we get on that one?
You got 8,960.
Wow, deferring down one club dropped it down significantly. Let's go down one more. Let me try and hit a 50-degree wedge now. So I'm going to go down to gap wedge. I think in this situation, what we can recognize is now we can play a completely different shot. We can play a shot that doesn't have to land up on top of the shelf and stay there. We can use more of the terrain that we're afforded here to kind of skip the ball up the slope. So this one's going to be the low trajectory of variety, mid stance, back of stance, flat shot, kind of like that.
Run up there.
Skip up there. I think I got a birdie opportunity, mate.
That is very, very nice.
Spin around 7,000?
Very well guessed. 6,768.
Okay, one last try. Let's go with pitching wedge.
Pitching wedge.
Why not? I fully encourage those at home, get out there on your practice range and explore different clubs for different spin solutions to different flags. Pitching wedge. This one's going to be more of a low, flat trajectory again. Oh, I like that. Skip up the slope there now. Okay, didn't quite have enough oomph, but I bet the spin was down. Can you check that one for me?
I can indeed. It was just under 7,000.
There you go. Okay, come on in, let's talk here. So, the principles are sometimes we need to get to back flags, sometimes we need to get to front flags. We need to understand that different tools produce different RPM of spin.
Great stuff, Cameron. Thank you very much for it. Very important information if you want to hit your wedges like the very best in the world. It's PhD level, in fact. Thank you to the Lake Nona